Welcome, wrestling fans. Welcome to Curtain Jerkin. As always, I'm your host, Jacob Grandi, reporting for the Main Event Marks YouTube channel. And speaking of Main Event Marks, I have the biggest mark, Troy. How you doing today?
What's up, man? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Uh, the end of the year gets me thinking about all the great wrestling that I've watched in 2023. But we were talking on here, and you're mainly an old school guy. You don't really watch week to week or really keep up with a lot of like the bell to bell action throughout the year.
Yeah, I fell out of it like consistently watching a couple of years ago. The I don't know. It's not that I don't like it, and there are like I do see some good stuff out there that I really do enjoy. It just I don't know. I There was so much other stuff that I didn't have time to watch that I ended up getting into that, and I'm like, man, now I don't have time for wrestling. So I only have like I like to get out and be active with other hobbies and stuff like that. So I don't know. I haven't been able to keep up as much as I would like to, honestly.
I hear that, man. What do you watch other than wrestling? What pulled you away from the squared circle?
Uh, well, it's a combo of things. Like new stuff keeps dropping every so often that I like. I got really into like some series that I had always had on the back burner, like Game of Thrones, and then I got into the House of Dragon, Doctor Who, bunch of nerdy stuff. I'll say, and the boys and all that kind of stuff. I got into, and there's always new stuff, good, bad, or indifferent, and that's actually what I cover a lot of that on Marks on Media. That's a different playlist right here on this YouTube channel, so people can check that out. I'll do news and reviews and different stuff like that, and I've been trying to up my game as far as like video editing and putting in memes and spicing up the videos a little bit.
Okay, okay. Well, what have you seen in 2023 of wrestling? What's like caught your eye? What do you enjoy?
I'm still into the positive wise. I'm still into the bloodline. Not as much. I feel like I don't know. I feel like after SummerSlam, it really just it's still got some meat on the bone, but it should be. Definitely not as hot as it once was. Roman's not there a whole lot to keep it going. Very hot and heavy for LA Knight. For once, I don't know. Like I'm one of them with Randy Orton. I'm like hot and cold on him. He never like he never did anything that made me go, "Oh my god!" Like I'm such a big fan. But I can't deny that people love him. He gets big reactions, and he is great, and he looks great. So his return really caught my eye. And then CM Punk, the saga of CM Punk, good, bad, and indifferent in the past year was just freaking insane. And just I know people. I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but just seems like a consistent downward spiral for AEW. I see their audiences. I see what their cards look like. I'm seeing people jumping ship, people complaining online. Like it seems like a mess. And then the stuff that Tony Khan says all the time, it just, I don't know. I have my opinions on AEW, and I'm willing to admit, like you pointed out, I don't watch week in week out, but I keep up with enough stuff. And when you're constantly a negative headline, that's not good.
Yeah, that makes sense. But this is what's interesting to me is you say, like you get pulled away from wrestling to watch, nerdy stuff like Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, and in the wrestling world, AEW is considered like the nerdy wrestling. So
Yeah.
what do you pick up on that they're kind of missing the mark on as far as that nerd culture that they're looking to maybe dive into? Um, to answer my own question a little bit, I think it's a continuity. Like you You meet a Star Wars fan, you meet a Star Trek fan, I mean, you meet a Harry Potter fan. They're always talking about little details of things, little details of things. And AEW, even though they kind of placate to a nerdy audience with like the characters they put on screen at times, they miss a lot of continuity aspects, and it's not very detail oriented by any means.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of like start and stop, start and stop. Like even when I was consistently watching years ago, I couldn't really invest in much of anything because it seemed like the plan changed on a week to week basis. And then like 2 years down the line or a year down the line, something might tie into something back a year ago. And they're like, now that's long-term storytelling. I'm like, I mostly forgot about this because you're not keeping it going. You're just like loosely tying things into it along the way. And I've lost interest because I'm like, I just don't care how it wraps up anymore. I mean, even something like this wasn't necessarily, I guess it technically was a storyline, but the Hangman Page situation. Like, I was all in for Hangman. And then by the time he actually got the title and he was the top guy, I'm like, cool, I guess, but, whatever. And then he was hardly ever there. Like, he'd pop in, he might have like a 5-minute segment on a show, but he hardly ever wrestled. You didn't see him a whole lot. He had such an unimpressive title run. And now from what I've seen from MJF, like, when he is there, it's usually good, and it seems like he's been there more lately. But he was the top guy in the company. He's the world champion, and they had him fiddle-dicking around with the ROH tag titles for a while with Adam Cole. I'm like, I don't care. And he introduces Tony Khan, that is, pronouns pal. Tony Khan introduced, like, what is this? Like, they're between the ROH and AEW. He introduced like a 10th freaking belt. Like, why should I care? For a brand that's not even on TV, by the way, unless I think they're only on Honor Club, right?
Yeah, their last pay-per-view of the year, Final Battle, was on just Honor Club, and that was I used to love Final Battle when it was like the real ROH, as I call it,
right?
And I watched it. It was a 5-hour show if you include the 0-hour, 14 matches.
My God.
The world title match was a throwaway match. Anthony Henry, a guy that they really did not push at all, was wrestling Eddie Kingston. And it was kind of like a match you would see on TV traditionally, like in the 80s. Just like they gave him a little bit of shine, but at the end of the day, you knew Kingston was going to win the ROH title. And then now I love the Continental Classic, but the ROH title is tied into that. Whoever wins that and the New Japan Strong Championship plus the new title. So they're like joining two titles into one new title to create a triple crown, which would be the second title this year where someone who's had it for a long time in Ring of Honor just simply like more or less like put it to the side. You had Samoa Joe with the television title, the longest television title reign in Ring of Honor history, and he literally barely wrestled with it, and then just said he didn't want it anymore, put it off to the side. And that's why, honestly, getting to a reason I wanted to talk to you today was because I'm trying to do like a year-end wrap show here, and I put worst promotion of the year, Ring of Honor, but that was before I kind of really thought about the NWA. I would say the NWA beats it by a nose.
Oh man!
But here's this company that used to. I mean, let's go back to 2018. They were pushing it with All In, and Tony Khan was there, and then Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega to some extent, were able to get a whole new promotion out of a show that Ring of Honor helped fund, which ultimately all their fans jumped to this new promotion, tanking Ring of Honor, and then that guy who helped pretty much screw Ring of Honor over bought the rights to it and is now having this like half-ass like bizarro world version of AEW on something that no one ever watches. And I mean, people don't really like Disco Inferno on Twitter, but he brought up a good point. He said at Ring of Honor's peak, there was like 100,000 people that would watch, and there'd be like 3,000 people in the arena. Now 3,000 people watch, and there's less than that in the arenas when they're filming. So this was not even a lateral move from Ring of Honor's perspective.
Well, when you mentioned NWA, did you say by a nose?
I did. Is
that supposed to be irony there?
I mean, it could be. But speaking of NWA, like Tyrus, like putting the title on Tyrus. I mean, I think that his lack of political ambiguity didn't help, but also whenever you think about the NWA Championship, you're thinking about Ric Flair, you're thinking about Terry Funk, you're thinking about Dory Funk Jr., you're thinking about guys who could legitimately be the best wrestler in the world at that time. And then you think about the dark ages of NWA, like in the mid 90s when it was still on like Chris Candido, it was still on oh man, I'm blanking on, but the guys who were holding these titles were still legitimately amazing wrestlers, even though they were wrestling in front of like 100 people.
Adam Pearce.
Yeah. Oh yeah. In the 2000s, Adam Pearce, Colt Cabana, guys who could legitimately, they had a name for themselves for whatever reason around the world because they were good wrestlers. I would say Tyrus didn't have any of that. They just put the title on him because he shows up on like Fox News, and then he tanked like the promotion when you had the title on Matt Cardona before that, Nick Aldis, guys who could talk and carry themselves in the ring very well. And I think that it kind of just brought the whole promotion down. And then you go into this, how they fumbled the CW bag a little bit because of their need to do a cocaine storyline. So you got to give it to NWA, but honorable mention to Ring of Honor.
Right. Well, and to touch on the Tyrus thing a little bit, Mike, Greg and I used to talk about that, and he was one because I would bring up, I said, Gutfeld, the show that he was on, I said is the number one late night show, like on cable, or not even on cable, but just across TV, period. And he's like, what the hell is Gutfeld? And I said, it's on Fox News. He's like, I don't watch that, so I don't know what it is. I said, yeah. And I'm not using him as the barometer. However, you can't tell me that the majority of people, like, I get the logic. Like, he's on national TV, the number one late night show every week or every night with the NWA title over his shoulder. Like, and he did that with the TV title too, or it was a TV title, right? Or the North American title.
One of those, I forget.
Yeah. And it's like, I get the logic, but at the same time, how many people tuning in to Gutfeld are like, man, I got to watch NWA now, which is hard to find. Like, it's not on a regular channel at a regular time. Is it like, isn't it just YouTube or something? Unless I'm mistaken.
At the time, it was YouTube and the Fight app. So if you paid, if you paid like a certain amount of I think it's like $10 for the Fight app. If you paid like the NWA, it's like $12. I think you could watch it a week ahead of everybody else. And there was some good wrestlers there, like Colby Carino. He's a smaller guy, but he was definitely killing it. And Matt Cardona at the time, the Indie God. So even though a lot of people were jumping ship, mainly Nick Aldis, I would say, who was like, I would say was like their Ric Flair of the modern NWA, leaving, you still had enough pieces there to like keep something going. And Tyrus was just like a big wrecking ball that went through all of that stuff. And then Billy Corgan doubling down, saying, if you don't like watching wrestling like Tyrus, then don't watch our show, because that's what we're going to put on. So thanks for the heads up, Billy, because I haven't watched since.
Yeah, I hate when anybody does that with anything, like when a product is complete, and this is for movies and TV too. Like, it's been pissing me off. It used to be you would try to, even if you were lying, you would try to suck up to the fans, get more people to watch. Now it's, well, if you don't like it, then quit watching us. I don't want you to watch us. It's like, okay. And people are tuning out in droves of if you're disrespectful to fans in any form of media now, they will say, I've got better things to do with my time. Because it's not like in the old days where you had to watch whatever was on cable at that time. You didn't really have much of an option. You could watch, whatever you rented from the video store. But now it's like you've got, just on YouTube alone and streaming sites, you've got a bazillion hours of content to keep you busy. You've got video games. You got everything. I don't have to watch your crap, dude. Especially something like NWA where I got to dig to watch you, or I have to remember to pull it up on YouTube, when it's playing or whatever. I'm not going to do that. And I'm only 33. I can't imagine somebody my dad's age that if he was still into wrestling, he wouldn't give a damn enough to pull up YouTube. Like, I don't know. I think it's a dumb plan, especially when you're hurting for viewers. And then you're going to be like, well, this is what we're doing. Suck it up. Like, nope. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, I agree. And not to be too negative, I mean, I did have a promotion of the year, not worst promotion, but best promotion of the year. And this might be, I don't know, a cop out, but I got to give it to WWE. I would say that, their first pay-per-view of the year, Sami Zayn in Montreal, then that kind of goes into a stadium show with Royal Rumble, two stadium shows back to back in WrestleMania. Then you have Backlash with Bad Bunny of all people, the whole crowd singing a song, and then it literally was consistently throughout the year great pay-per-view events. They brought a new title that at first everyone kind of made fun of and said it was a consolation prize, but because they had great matches on television, well built, which is kind of like, I would say, a calling card to AEW, having really good matches right there on your television. They did that kind of with the Rollins title this year, and now you have Jey Uso's a star, Cody's a star. Like, I went to Raw in May, and people were singing along to every single person. The crowds, like, this was in the Greensboro Coliseum, and it was a sellout for a Raw. Usually, the past 10 years, you had to sit on one side, and it kind of was weird. It kind of felt like you were in a studio. But honestly, when it does wrap around like that, you feel like you're in. It gives it that sports-like atmosphere, regardless if you're watching like a soap opera play out. The I would say the wrestling show being in the round really does more than you would think.
Well, and you think about like even the pay-per-views now, where every single pay-per-view now, not just like the big four, but like every single one of them now, they say we've eliminated the stage to make more room for people to squeeze in. Like, that's nuts. That's never been a thing with WWE. They've always had a big, even if it was the same stage for every single show, they've always had, the LED stage and all that other crap. Now they're like, no, we want to squeeze more people in, so we're just going to have a tunnel they come out of. And it works. And when I was in Detroit, like, they were electric for that. I might be going to, there's a SmackDown coming to, I think, Cincinnati, a few weeks after WrestleMania. My buddy's trying to get me to go, and I might be going to that one. It's like, yeah, it's we got to hop on tickets soon because they might be sold out. Whereas that wasn't a thing in the past.
Oh no, no.
You used to be able to. I remember, like, Ohio's not great for big audiences usually. At least not Dayton and Cincinnati. Columbus is okay. Cleveland is pretty decent. But Dayton and Cincinnati usually have crappy crowds for wrestling shows. But now I think that's all changed. Like, everywhere you go is kind of people are excited for WWE to come to town again. And that hasn't I don't think that's happened since, I don't know, Ruthless Aggression era, probably, I'd say.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember being a little kid going to like Attitude Era house shows, and they would literally have to put Stone Cold Steve Austin on in the middle of the show to get him out because usually, I guess at the time, they went from Greensboro and then the top guys flew to New York.
Oh wow.
So they would have to put him on in the middle of the show because they know half the crowd would leave after Austin, so he wouldn't get flooded with fans, and then the rest of the crowd watched like I think like D'Lo Brown and X Pac or Triple H, which would be in the main event at the time.
Right. And yeah, quick aside about that. It's funny. I flew in 2015. Greg and I went to SummerSlam in New York City, and my connection what landed in Greensboro.
Oh, okay.
And for people that don't know, the airport out there, I don't know if it's this way for every single flight, but for mine, you unloaded onto the like the tarmac, the runway, whatever, and then you walked into the airport from there. And Greg and I were talking about, it's like, wow, it's like those old Ric Flair promos where they lower it and he walks right out of the plane onto the runway. It's like, yeah, I guess that's just Greensboro. I don't know.
There's a few, yeah, you can, it's like 50-50 shot of how they're going to get you off that plane in Greensboro. It's a tiny airport. It's obviously
Yeah.
one that I use a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if those Ric Flair promos were right there where you were staying at.
Yeah, it's funny. I was like, man, that's kind of cool. But yeah, they bring you over to Greensboro and then they cart you up to New York City. So you're like flying along the Atlantic the whole time. I'm like, it's kind of a weird route, but whatever.
Well, going from promotion, which yeah, obviously I would say, yeah, I picked WWE. I felt like it was a cop out, and I picked Ring of Honor, and I posted something on Twitter like a poll, and I got an overwhelming response that NWA was the worst promotion, and they made a good argument.
Mm-hmm.
They reminded me of how bad it was. That's really why I don't do a worst of show. Typically, because I kind of forget what I don't like, which might be why I'm still a wrestling fan.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some, like, I know Greg would watch AEW every week and he would crap on it and people would be like, why are you still watching the show? He's like, well, I'm hoping that it gets better. I'm not hoping for them to fail. I'm not hoping for it to suck, but it's just like, he's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sit here and gush over something that I think absolutely sucks. I can't do that. He's like, I'm going to be honest about it.
I mean, I like
so
AEW. I get what he's saying though. I feel like in 2021, when Hangman had the title, like you mentioned earlier, they brought in Punk, they brought in Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole in the same show. It just seemed like they were going to legitimately be a competitor to WWE. 2022, pretty much they were hit with Punk injuries and then Punk turmoil. And in 2023, they kind of expanded the brand because of CM Punk, more Punk turmoil. So he left. So now they have a show that's tanking. And then plus they bought Ring of Honor. So it just seems like it's spread too thin. People were really praising Cody for jumping when he did back then. And remember, I mean, I don't know if you were watching at the time, but the AEW crowds were booing Cody, turning on Cody.
Yep.
And it's like night and day with how he is in WWE. And
now he's like a god.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Jade. I mean, I don't think Jade is. I mean, she debuted and then they did nothing with her. Don't get me wrong, it's not good, but AEW crowds never really took to Jade, and I don't think that's going to be the case in WWE. So,
right. Well, the thing was, I know Jade got a lot of like. They tried to Goldberg her. They were like, "Oh, you have minimal training, you look great. We're throwing you out there. Like you've got some charisma, like natural charisma to you. We're just gonna throw you out there." The only difference was they had her talk, whereas Goldberg just like roared and crap. But the thing was, like, Goldberg could keep that going, and he had like he had the ability to where like more talented guys could walk him through it until he kind of got the hang of what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a decent foundation. Like, I don't know, man. Like, did you hear that one Triple H comment at a post it was like at a press conference, like post-show press conference, or he basically said Jade has like no base. Like they did not teach her a damn thing. Like we're basically starting from the ground up with her. And
that sucks. That sucks. I mean, you look at guys like Goldberg was wrestling like William Regal, Jericho, and then you compare them. I'm not trying to be rude to anybody, but you compare them to Red Velvet. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
The people that are sitting there pumping up the AEW women's division, I will say they've got some great, talented women like Saraya, Ruby, why am I thinking it? Tony Storm is pretty good. She's not amazing, but she's good. You've got, it's mostly the women that ever had a stint in WWE are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the indie chicks they're picking up, like, you cannot tell me that, because I have seen some matches. You can't tell me that they think that Sky Blue is just so awesome in the ring that she's going to get a push. We know why they're pushing her, because she trends every week on Twitter for her assets.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside in Sky Blue's backside. You got to give it to her.
Yeah, that's the only thing. You cannot tell me her and who's the one that's in House of Black? I'm blanking on her name.
Julia Hart.
Yeah, Julia Hart. She's okay. I don't think she's bad, but I've never seen one of her matches where I'm like, oh my god, that was so good. I've never left. I've never finished one of her matches and remembered it the next day. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me being too harsh, but the ones that act like they've got a strong women's division in AEW, like they have a handful of decent wrestlers. I don't like Abaddon. I don't think Abaddon's a good wrestler. She's got a creepy, memorable gimmick, and that's it. I don't think she's bad in the ring. I just, again, it's another one where I'm not like, man, you remember that Abaddon match?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in the AEW women's division. There's a lot of maybe wrestlers that aren't that good, but this year in 2023, there was a wrestler that was very good, and I feel like it's cliche to say, might be a cop-out just like my first answer for promotion, but I'm going to say my wrestler of the year, Will Ospreay. I know you don't watch week to week, and I know you aren't too big of a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, but what do you think about giving that nod to Will Ospreay?
So, I mean, I will say what I have seen of him through. I didn't used to be a fan. I'll admit that. I just was like, dude, everything I see of him is just flippy crap and gymnastics, and like, why do I care? Same reason I didn't like Ricochet for years. But he has gotten better. I mean, obviously he still does flippy stuff, whatever, but he doesn't seem dangerous and stupid about it, which is more than I can say for people like Vikingo. But he puts on good matches with pretty much everybody. And God bless him. I saw his match with Jericho, man. Like, that was a load. Like, and Jericho is a guy who I would have picked as Wrestler of the Year, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last couple of years, I'm like, dude, just get the F out of the ring, man. Just, didn't Ricky Starks call him like a clout vampire?
He did.
Yeah, like that's exactly what he is. Because he just had a comment recently. Oh, I have no interest in working with Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. I want to work with somebody like I can't even remember. Swerve. He wants to work with somebody like Swerve. And it's like, yeah, because Swerve has momentum and you want to kill it. Like, you suck, dude. And it's luckily he didn't kill Will Ospreay's momentum, but man, he dragged Chris Jericho to a halfway decent match, and I can respect him for that. And he had good matches with was it Jericho he took on at All In? I can't even remember now.
Yeah, the All In that was that stadium show match. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the one. Yeah. But I've seen other matches of his. I blanking on off the top of my head, but he's good. I was honestly hoping that he was going to sign with WWE, and when he said, "Oh, I signed with AEW," I'm like, there are only two things I can think of as to why, I guess three. The first one is his ex-wife works in WWE. Maybe he doesn't want to be in that situation. I don't know. I don't know how their marriage ended, if it was, amicable or not. And the other one is, like, maybe Tony Khan backed a Ryder truck full of money up to his house, and WWE was like, look, we're not matching that. Just go for it.
I think that was it, and there's also a rumor that WWE wanted him to move to Florida or move to America, and he wanted to stay in the UK, and Tony Khan will let him stay in the UK, and I do think that they probably paid him quite a bit. But I wanted him to go to WWE just because there's so many guys in AEW. Like, if you're a fan of somebody, I worry about them signing with AEW because I don't want them to get treated like Andrade or Keith Lee or, lots of other talented wrestlers that made a splash when they made it over there. But then after 6 months, you forgot about them. They didn't know what to do with them. Even guys like Malachi Black, he's in a tag team now mainly. It's a great tag team, but I feel like he could have had a good feud with MJF. Swerve was in a tag team for a year before he really kind of let the crowd kind of tell Tony Khan to push him. But, not trying to complain too much. I am trying to talk good about Will Ospreay here. It's the Stadium show with Jericho. He started out in Wrestle Kingdom with Kenny Omega, which I do feel like that was kind of a passing of the torch moment, regardless of who won that match. Then going into the summer where he, like I said, wrestled Jericho, but then also wrestled Omega again, signing with AEW we mentioned, and he had a great match during the G1 with Naito like 2 weeks or like 10 days after that Stadium match with Jericho, and it was a semifinals or it was a block finals match, and I thought it was better than the finals, which usually is not the case. So I feel like if you're not going to give it to Will Ospreay or not give him like an honorable mention, you either have to like kind of admit that you haven't really been keeping up with him, or some kind of bias is there, because I feel like he's got kind of like a Conor McGregor swag to his promos now too, like kind of like a soccer bro, like probably will do real well on a Barstool Sports podcast kind of vibe when he starts running down people during his promos.
And I try not to judge too many people on this, but like somebody like if anybody tries saying like Kenny Omega is great on promos, like they're just being disingenuous in my opinion. Like he's not the worst, but he's never been good in my opinion. But Will Ospreay, he's not somebody you would see on a compilation of like, oh man, look at this turd on the mic, like I don't know if you'd put him in the league of somebody like a Punk or whatever, who's just like built different. But yeah, like you said, his promos are good, and as we found out the hard way a few times, AEW doesn't script anything.
Yeah.
And he does well. I feel like he speaks from the heart of his character, or just even the heart of himself, in IRL. And he does good. His in-ring stuff is great. Greg used to say that, and it took me a while to warm up to it, but it really is great. He's got one of the best theme songs in the entire business, any company. And his look is awesome. And I talked before about, oh, you're never going to walk away from so-and-so's match remembering it the next day. Will Ospreay's matches will stick with you, even the lower end ones that aren't in the grand scheme of things are kind of meaningless. They'll stick with you. He leaves you remembering what the hell he did in the ring, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, totally. Honorable mention too to Gunther, I would say. He
oh God, yeah.
His match at WrestleMania, the triple threat match, and just him kind of doing something that people, it seemed like my entire life, people were like, the Intercontinental title needs to be something. It needs to be held up like it was in the past. And it got to the point where I didn't believe that could happen until they gave it to Gunther. They let him have a title reign, and just last night on Raw, him and Miz had an amazing match, and I mean, much like you with Will Ospreay, I used to hate Miz, but now, like, Miz held that title more than anybody, it seems. Gunther's held it for the longest, so those two guys, I would say, within the last 10 years, were the two guys that made that title mean something. And it's just really cool to see. And, I mean, everyone always talks about flippy shit. There's no way you can accuse Gunther of anything like that.
No. And to your point about making it mean something, for years, and I'm sure you remember, you've been watching forever and faithfully, like, everybody who's held that title for the past, like, decade, I'm going to make this mean something again. I'm going to bring prestige back to the Intercontinental title. And they might have a couple good matches, but really nobody gives a damn. Like, at the end of the day, even if they're good matches, it's like, oh, that's a cool little prelim match, whatever, who cares? And we move on. But Gunther, like, I actually look forward to his matches. I want to see what's going to go on. Who's going to pull out? Yeah, it's like, is he going to win again? And it's great. I've always enjoyed his matches, but I definitely have enjoyed just the title reign. And it's one of them where it's like, on one hand, it'd be cool if so-and-so could beat him. On the other hand, man, I really don't want him to lose, because his reign is so damn good.
Yeah, that's true. Real quick, I would say maybe like the worst wrestler of the year. I have Tyrus. I have Danhausen. I know. Yeah. I gotta say, I just don't get it. No. I think the potential of the character is there, where he's sneaky but goofy. I can see where that's going. Kind of like the guy from Nightmare Before Christmas kind of a vibe. Like I forget his name, Jack Skellington.
Yeah.
Going that route with it, but you gotta wrestle a little more. And I think a lot of time the humor just doesn't settle with me. And then I also have Mercedes Moné. So much hype with her signing to Stardom, leaving WWE, only for her to kind of take a lot of the shine away from a promotion that was getting a lot of positive feedback from fans around the world. Kind of like,
you better. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
I was just saying, like, instead of bringing up a title that they kind of made, they gave her a new title. They put her in the New Japan Pro Wrestling spotlight, where they could have brought in a few other ladies who had kind of grinded it out to bring Stardom where it was today. And then she just gets hurt after they do all that promotion and kind of divide the fan base a little bit.
You better watch out posting that and saying that stuff, man, because the Sasha stands will come after you, and they will come for your throat. And they hate you. How dare you speak anything but in glowing terms about their queen?
I mean, Sasha fans, come at me. I want the smoke. I'll say that she brought Stardom down. WWE ain't missing her either. And
hell no.
And then for some reason AEW really hasn't brought her in, except for in the skybox, literally 100 yards away from the ring.
I feel like, because this was the thing that, like Greg pointed out, he was like, for all those people going on and on about, oh, it's such a big deal that Sasha's walking out. Who gives a crap? And he wasn't so hot on her. I was always a Sasha Banks fan, but you can't deny they have not skipped a beat. And all the people trying to pretend like, oh, man, their women's division has suffered with that. In what way? She's not missed.
I was a Sasha Banks fan. I am a Sasha Banks fan. But, like, I got to say, you got to call a spade here. Like, this was a really bad year for her hype. Don't get me wrong. There's probably other wrestlers out there, like tons of independent wrestlers that aren't as good as her in the ring. But for the hype that she made and for the big deal she made leaving, it was just a dud. I mean,
she also got really poorly, like badly injured at one point, didn't she?
Yeah, that did happen. They did put her in a match with Willow, who last year hurt Anna Jay, but that's bad. I would say that's bad booking right there. Knowing like what you have and booking the match the way that they did, I don't know. But even at that, she called the audible and got Willow to pin her. So Willow was the first champion of this new title that she was trying to build. And then now Stardom's having to book Willow, flying her to Japan and everything, which was not in the cards after Mercedes Moné kind of booked herself to go under.
Did anybody actually confirm that? Because I heard that as a rumor for a while. And my thing, I was like, there's 0% chance that was an audible in the ring. And the reason I say that is, can you imagine, like, she'd barely been there for any amount of time. And in this big company she's in, I mean, it's Stardom, but at the end of the day, it's also New Japan. And New Japan's going to be like, sure, newbie, come on in and decide the fate of our first champion. Like, because you're injured. Like, I feel like that wouldn't go over well.
I mean, I don't think it did go over well because I don't think she's been back. Once Willow came to Japan, she dropped it like within 1 or 2 matches, and they haven't had Mercedes Moné back since. So
that might be true.
Yeah, it might not have gone over well. And
dude, I would have fired her on the spot.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that as a hater. Like I said, I like her. I think she's great. She could have been an asset, but I don't care who you are unless you're like top dog. You do something like that that's supposed to be meaningful, you're gone. Like, sorry.
Yeah, totally. And to kind of maybe put a bow on everything, I mentioned it to you off air, but every year I try to keep a top 10 list of my favorite matches. It was honestly something that I try to do with Greg every year, and we would kind of joke around about it. By March, we would forget about it. But honestly, this year I held true to it. I did a top 10 every month, and I would release it on Twitter, and people would make fun of it. People would be like, the top 10 matches in June, like, you are the biggest mark ever. But I just kept posting it. I didn't mind. Call me a spade's a spade. I don't mind, in a world of marks, if you want to call me the biggest mark, it's kind of like you're putting the title on me, I feel like, a little bit.
The main event mark, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. So I have the top 10 matches, and the criteria is I have to see it and I have to like it. So this is my top 10. Kiyomiya and Kino, and that was a match that took place January 1st, making the top 10. This was like a viral moment, I would say, for Noah, where Kiyomiya took like a superplex from the top turnbuckle, and he was supposed to kind of fall on the apron, but he kind of halfway fell on the apron and tumbled to the floor. So the clip is more famous than the match, but the match itself was pretty good as well. And going into number 9, Bullet Club Gold versus FTR, July 7th, the first time they wrestled each other on Collision. I think July Collision was my favorite wrestling show. Like,
yeah,
October Collision was probably my least favorite wrestling show.
Yeah, Greg would go on and on. He was like, because he watched all of it, and except he never watched Rampage. But he would say, he's like, man, it's like night and day watching Dynamite and then Collision. And he's like, you cannot tell me that Tony Khan is booking both shows. There's no way. So our theory was that somebody that they, who apparently will remain nameless, was booking Collision. But yeah, he said that match that you just mentioned, he said was an amazing match and was a contender for match of the year in his opinion.
Yeah, I would have to agree with him. We'll get to more of that feud a little later in this list, but Ospreay versus Naito for the block finals we already talked about when we mentioned Ospreay. Okada and Switchblade for Wrestle Kingdom, the actual main event of Wrestle Kingdom. It kind of gets overshadowed by another match we're going to mention on the list. And then number 6, the biggest show of the year rarely has a match in the top 10 for me, but Walter versus Drew versus Sheamus at WrestleMania has to be in there. It's number 6. That match was insane. I don't care if you were a fan of what style of wrestling you were a fan of. I think you would get something out of this match here. And plus, Sheamus is, I would say someone that I've written off years ago as like, when Sheamus comes out, yeah, he works a little snug, but I kind of am over him. But I feel like Walter kind of brought him up to a new level for me in this one.
Yeah. Uh, I'm sorry. Who was it? Was Walter and who was it?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Gunther, Drew
Or
McIntyre, and Sheamus for
yeah,
at
okay,
WrestleMania.
yeah. Oh, dude, that was one of my. It wasn't my match of the night. I don't think. I forget which. I forget which matches were on what night, but that was near my top. I was like, man, I don't think anything's gonna top it. Was that night one with the Rhea and Charlotte, or was that night two?
Oh man, you're making me think. I think it was night. Oh, it was night two. I have it. I actually have it right in front of me. It was night two.
Okay, so maybe that was the match of the night for me. The women really brought it at WrestleMania this past year.
Oh yeah.
I dug it.
For sure.
But yeah, that match. Those are three of my favorite guys. I think Sheamus gets overlooked so much, and Gunther, as we mentioned, is just in a league of his freaking own. And then like Drew McIntyre is my fellow Scotsman. He's always been a favorite of mine, but he's another one that gets overlooked. I feel so bad that he had that title run in front of zero people. But at the same time, he's fantastic. I don't know if I like him with the Judgment Day currently. Seems like a round peg in a square hole, or whatever. But he's always pulling in banger after banger of a match.
For sure, they have kind of pulled away from that Judgment Day deal. Now he's kind of just mad by himself, and he's got a title match against Seth Rollins at day one, which I guess is going to be like a Raw Super Show this year because January 1st is on Monday. But going back into my list here, Bullet Club Gold versus FTR. When they ran it back the week after the match that was number 9, I think they actually had a better match on their rematch, and that's ranked number 5. Number 4, another WrestleMania match. This time, the main event of night 1. The third tag match in this top 10 list, was I think is rare. Kevin Owens and Sammy versus the Usos. Main event at WrestleMania night 1, and goddamn did it steal the show, I would say.
Yeah. You said that the tag match night 1 of WrestleMania. Yeah, it was. I'd honestly forgotten because I was thinking of the women earlier. I forgot about the tag match, and I just pulled up the card, and I was like, oh man, that's right. It was, yeah, that was good stuff. Sammy was another one. I mean, I've always liked him, and I like Kevin Owens. But man, they were like in another gear in the past year, especially Sammy.
Oh yeah, the first 6 months of 2023 was, I think, the best 6 months of Sammy's like 20-some year career. I mean,
undeniably,
yeah, Montreal, the Bloodline storyline wrapping up, and then him main eventing WrestleMania. I mean, that hit home with me because I was a big El Generico fan. Like at the beginning days of YouTube when I was in high school, like people would ask me what I liked about pro wrestling. I would usually show them like a Briscoes match, an El Generico like music video compilation thing that would be on YouTube a lot at the time, and I would show them the Dr. D. David Schultz smacking that dude from 60 Minutes.
Yeah. And I remember meeting him as El Generico years ago. I went to they had a show in Dayton that was in 2011. It was Survival of the Fittest, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they had like a free meet and greet up front where you could go through and just get them they all autograph like one like Ring of Honor logo paper for you. And him and they had just launched on TV, HDNet or whatever the hell it was. Or no, not HDNet. I'm sorry. It was whatever the local station was, in your particular area. They had just launched that deal. And I talked to him and Jay Lethal and I was like, dude, I watched your match for the TV title, best TV match of the year. Like, it freaking blew me away. And he was so cool. I mean, like, he didn't talk as his gimmick, whatever, but he like bowed, oh, thank you, and whatever. I'm like, or gracias, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
I love still playing into the character for this like super smart Ring of Honor audience. It was kind of cool to do.
Yeah, right.
But going into the top three, the podium, if you will, we have a match that I think a lot of people have as their first match of the year: Osprey versus Omega in June for not Worlds Collide, but Forbidden Door in Canada. That match was amazing. But I have number two, which is a match that I haven't heard very many people speak of, but I loved this match. I almost put it at number one, but I thought that would be more of something I would do for controversy rather than like honesty. But I have MJF versus Bryan Danielson, March 5th. This match was great. I mean, so much blood, and then MJF at peak heel mode, cheating his way with the fire extinguisher at the end. I thought this match was amazing. I remember I was watching it at my friend's house. His grandpa was falling asleep. He was falling asleep, and I was literally smacking both of their knees, waking up the entire time, marking out in their living room while everyone else was almost asleep. I mean, I guess that's not really talking about why this match would be good. It was late at night, people. But I mean, go back out of your way and watch this match if you haven't seen it. Bryan Danielson, I feel like he's like a modern day legend. You can kind of put him in as your wrestler of the year, I would say, for the past like 3 or 4 years, and I wouldn't argue with you. Versus MJF before he kind of started doing this Adam Cole thing and they kind of diluted his heat. This was it for me. And then number one, Osprey and Omega at Wrestle Kingdom, their first encounter. What is your opinions on my top three? And we talked a lot of shit about AEW, but then they crept into 2 matches in my top 3. So I guess,
yeah,
as bad as the booking is as AEW, bell to bell, they are a great promotion.
Yeah, for the most part, I feel like too many things like go against them in the spirit of how great they are, or how great their in-ring product is. When, like you said, you're like, oh, they're falling asleep, it's late at night. That was it WrestleMania 37? What was the one that they had in New York right before the pandemic?
Oh, 35.
35, okay. Dude, that one went on for like 12 hours. It was so long.
Oh, yeah.
And there was good stuff on the card. Just like AEW shows. They go on and on and on sometimes. Like, not all the time, but some of their pay-per-views are just like, they're marathons. I'm like, dude, I don't want to sit here for 5 hours watching your show, man.
Yeah.
That's why I fell out of a lot of it, because I'm like, I don't have 5 hours to spare on one show, plus 4 more hours for your weekly shows. And WWE does similar stuff. So I'm like, I can't. I just don't. I mean, I can. I just don't want to.
I would say the WWE PLEs, though, are like 3 hours. A lot of them are shorter than Raw.
Right. Well, Greg used to give me crap because he's like, "Oh, did you watch it?" I'm like, yeah, I watched it in like 1.5 speed."
Huh.
And he's like, "Why?" I'm like, "So I can get through it quicker." I was like, "I don't miss anything. It's still fine." And I was like, "But if I watch it the next day, I can watch it in like 1.5 speed, and it's cool." Like, usually there's not like big promos and angles and crap that are, I'm gonna fast forward through. So, but yeah, that's what I had to do with AEW, and even watching it that way, it's still a haul.
For sure.
The only one, that's the first one, and then the other one is it's like, man, there was this great match on the card, but like, look at all this other stuff that was on the card. It's like, oh God, like everybody, and it's just a difference of opinion. Like, if you liked it, whatever. I don't like this stuff. Greg was very against this stuff, but I don't hate blood like Greg did. Greg was always against super bloody, gross matches, especially if it was just blood for blood's sake, like what Jon Moxley does most of the time.
Mm-hmm. But
I watched most of that Swerve and Hangman match, and I'm like, dude, gross.
Yeah.
Like, I just have no interest in that at all. Like, I don't want to watch your death matches. I don't want to watch you bleeding in each other's mouths. Like,
Yeah, the bleeding in the mouth thing was, I think it was designed to kind of get that reaction, and they did it. So if that was their desired reaction, they nailed it. If they wanted
yeah,
to kind of pay homage to Magnum TA Tully Blanchard in some weird way, I think they missed it.
yeah. It was freaking gross, and those two are great. So I don't think they needed to do all that. But yeah, and Danielson is always fantastic in everything he does.
Hold on, man. I gotta get my charger real quick.
All right.
That's it. Okay, I'm back, man. So you said Danielson is great at anything he does?
Yeah. Yeah, Brian Danielson, I mean, you put him in any situation, he's going to knock the ball out of the park, So, and he's been that way for years. He was a great signing and a dead ringer, I think, for AEW. The problem also lies in the booking with that as well, where I don't feel like they capitalized on it well enough. And he's had great matches, but doesn't feel like a star. If you like, I don't know if you feel that way too. Like, I don't think he's drawing too many eyeballs to Dynamite and Collision.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. I don't think he is drawing too many people there, but I think kind of like Christian Cage, and there's a few other people that when they come out, they do feel like a star. Like, I watched that Ring of Honor show from this past weekend, and when it was Mox, Claudio, and Danielson in this six-man tag with Mark Briscoe and the FTR, you could tell like it looked like there was about 2,000 people in about a 20,000 seater, but there was just like kind of a gasp in the air. Like, people knew that stars were in the fucking ring. Much more so than a match that I think outshined that match, like Tony Nese and Ethan Page, where people know they're seeing good wrestling, but there's not that big fight feel. I think Danielson does bring that big fight feel, which is
For
something
sure.
that AEW needs. Like, his matches with Hangman in 2021 were amazing. Like I said, his match with MJF. So I think he brings that big fight feel to these guys who can go in the ring and kind of helps them get over, kind of helps them cross over into, at least in the wrestling fans' eyes, as a big star.
Yeah. And if you're going to use him that way, like as we're going to use him to build others up, I mean, cool, whatever. But you got to walk that fine line between, using guys that way, and then when do we start looking like a retirement home?
Oh yeah.
When they bring in people like Page, Copeland, even Punk there for a while. Like, he's got some gas left in the tank, but you can't tell me he's going to wrestle for another 10 years. Like, if he wrestles for another 5 years, I'll be shocked.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think those 5 years is he's contractually obligated to WWE. I guess we have to talk about it. You alluded to it with Punk and everything this year. What do you think about his going to WWE, and I guess the lack of him doing anything there so far?
I mean, I think it's going to pop off going into WrestleMania season. I think they introduced him when they did because, I mean, they didn't have to, but I feel like it made sense. Like, they were in Chicago. The blow up happened with AEW. They kind of, like, if they didn't capitalize on it, it would have been really dumb, I think. So, and they brought him out right at the end of the show, and the show was good enough where they didn't have people chanting for him all night and ruining, hijacking the show.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. But, Rollins started stuff, whether he feels that way or not, in IRL. Rollins started stuff with him back when he was still in AEW, like in interviews, and it's perfect. And I choose to believe that Rollins is just playing fourth dimensional chess, and he's just working because he's proven he's made some offhanded remarks before that were a little like, come on, man. But he's human. talking about Moxley and stuff. But at the end of the day, he's a professional, and he's one of the top guys in the business. Like him or hate him, he was the welcoming committee for Cody and blew the doors off with him. And I think he wants to do that with Punk now. He's like, hey, you've been gone. I'm the guy now. Or I'm not going to be the first one to point out that their careers have paralleled each other so much. And I think this is a perfect way to bring Punk in, is him and Rollins for the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania. And I think maybe Rollins costs him at the Rumble or something. I don't know. Maybe he'll just win Elimination Chamber, and that sets it up officially. You never know.
Who do you think's winning the Rumble then?
Cody.
Cody?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Cody, Roman 2, and Punk, Rollins. It seems logical. I mean, anything could happen, but it just seems logical. I don't think they're going to throw away Punk and Rollins at the Rumble or Elimination Chamber or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool, man. I mean, it was a hell of a 2023. What are you doing for the first part of 2024 as far as marks on media and main event marks?
Well, for anybody that hasn't kept up with the main event marks, if you've noticed, I've been talking about Greg in the past tense. It's because I updated the Twitter and everything, and I may do a show with his with some mutual friends, but he passed away from a major heart attack on his way to work early December. And it was really unexpected. He's only 39, and he was in really great condition. Worked out, like, if anybody listened to the podcast, he worked out constantly. I mean, you had to know this guy, he ate healthy all the time, never drank or smoked or did anything. And just heart attack while waiting for the train, and that was it. They couldn't revive him by the time officials showed up. So he was the main reason I was keeping the podcast alive. I like doing it, but he was still really into it. And now that he's gone, I'm like, I could keep it up with somebody else, but I've got other projects going on, not just Marks on Media, but I'm like trying to get books published, and I'm working full time, and I've got other stuff going on in my life I'm trying to set up. So, Mark, the podcast is no more. Like I said, I might do one more like in memoriam show for him. Some mutual friends of ours are trying to set up a time with me. And the Marks on Media, though, I update that almost daily with usually with shorts if it's daily. But I post at least one or usually 2 to 3 long form videos a week. I try to keep it only at 2 because that's a lot of content. But I do either reviews of a movie or a show with video clips to it, and I kind of break it down, or I go into news, whether it's about anime or TV, video, or movies, video games, different stuff like that, or anything in the peripheral of media I'll cover. So I've been putting a lot of time into that, and we have been growing a lot of subscribers. Your videos have been getting quite a few hits as of lately, been growing there. So I appreciate everybody there. I will, if there's something in wrestling that I think is an interesting enough topic to do a long form video on, I'll do it. Or if it's like a little quick news blurb, I'll do something in a short. But I leave most of the wrestling stuff to you now.
Hey, I'll fly the flag.
Yeah. It's and it's fun. Oddly enough, because obviously you have access to the YouTube like I do. The stuff of ours that gets the most hits from the main event marks past is anytime we talk about the Von Erichs. It's really weird. People are super into Von Erichs. But I don't know. It is what it is. But
I can see that picking up a little bit now with the Iron Claw and everything.
yep. And I will clarify, anybody that if you want to go back and listen to any of our clips talking about the Von Erichs, I've had this comment a few times. They're like, "Oh, you're talking crap about dead people, whatever." I'm like, there's a difference between talking crap and like, hey, this factually happened to somebody, you know? So we're not trying to pile on to, hey, they're dead, we're going to talk crap. But it's like, if you're I mean, their issues were well documented, you know? So, but I'm looking forward. Are you looking forward to the Iron Claw?
Oh, fuck yeah. I thought it was coming out last week, and I already made plans to go. And then someone a buddy of mine, Kenny, who listens to the podcast, I run a beer drive-through, and he was picking up some beer on his way home, and he gave me the bad news that it's next weekend. It's the 22nd where it comes out. So kind of
looks fun.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna go see it. I mean, I want to see MJF's acting debut. Isn't
it ironic that he's playing the most hated, like, quote unquote, member of the family?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. And I've also, unlike you, I rarely watch things other than wrestling. I'm a podcast guy. I like wrestling, but I mean, Ted Lasso, Abbott Elementary, What We Do in the Shadows, and The Bear are literally the only 4 TV shows I've watched in the past like 2 or 3 years. So the fact that the guy from The Bear is now playing a wrestler, you already sold me like with the Von Erichs, you sold me with MJF, and now it's the guy who won the Emmy for the show, one of the only 4 shows I watch. I'm excited.
Yeah, and he made news besides the Iron Claw coming out. He made news not too long ago where apparently he said he didn't come right out and say it was definitely Marvel, but he said he was going out for a Marvel type role, and apparently he didn't really want it that bad. So I don't know why he auditioned, but he said he asked them in the audition. He's like, "Why should I take this role? Like, sell this role to me?" And they literally said, "Go fuck yourself."
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and he was like, "Okay, well, I'm not getting this job." So I don't know if you have to go out for so many. Like, I don't know how it works with acting. If you have to go out for so many roles, like contractually or something like that. Like, but yeah, that's funny though. And I know there's him. I don't recognize most of the people in the movie besides him, Zac Efron, and MJF, obviously. But it's it looks really fun. I always love it. It's a sad. I feel sick about it, because it's a sad, sick story. But I always like seeing it. Like I always like seeing more about it and hearing about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's something a little bit to that. I mean, I like sad music. I know a lot of people pay a lot of attention to true crime. There's something about something that's a little sad, maybe a little mystery to it, that kind of maybe keeps you intrigued. And then if you can keep me entertained with that, like wrestling does, like movies do, I'm probably going to watch whatever gets put out about it, like your guys' shows on it and this movie.
Yeah, and Dark Side of the Ring is one of my favorite shows ever. So that's fantastic. And obviously, I mean, you can tell in the name what they cover. And then, this is a weird thing. I go to Comic-Cons with my wife a lot. And during the actors' strike, we went to, Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Comic Expo. And Stephen Amell was there. And I never saw him in person. But he was talking about Heels. Did you ever watch Heels?
Not as much as I'd like. Was it good?
I don't know. That was another one. It was on my watch list, and I never got around to it. But the weird thing is, like 2 days after Comic-Con, because he's talking about the future heels and all this other stuff. And like 2 days after that, they say, oh, it's canceled.
Oh, ouch.
I'm like, oh, damn. So I don't know. It was one of them that got the axe during the actors strike. But yeah, I don't think I covered that on the channel, but I have covered some stuff about the Iron Claw, like when the stuff came down about MJF getting that role. Lily James, she's in it too. I can't remember who she plays, but I think she's one of the Von Erich sisters. She's in the movie, and if anybody doesn't know her, she was Cinderella. She was Pam Anderson in that Pam and Tommy Lee show that was on Hulu. But yeah, if anybody wants to hear anything about movies, TV, video games, anime, I don't cover anime as much because even though there are a lot of weebs, they don't like to hang out on my channel. So I don't know. But yeah, come check it out. I have the occasional video that blows up. I'm still trying to get the algorithm down. And tomorrow, I don't know when this is going to post, but sometime this week I'll post something. I'm doing a video with a guy that he's had some movie experience, and he worked in some movies before. He posts a lot on YouTube. He's got like 5,000 followers, but we're talking about different stuff going into award season and stuff coming up in 2024. And the fact that Jonathan Majors, who played Kang in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just got canned and he's probably going to prison.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll talk about that in long form and give some opinions. So if anybody likes hearing about entertainment news, I try to keep up to date with that.
Well, that's awesome, man. I love having you on, Troy. I feel like we've never met in person, but we've known each other for years. It's
right.
It's an odd but nice friendship. We met through wrestling. It kind of bums me out knowing that you're not as into it as you used to be, but I get it. It was better. It seemed, or I don't know. I kind of look back on like 5-6 years ago, and believe it or not, yeah, I get like nostalgia over things that happened like 2018 now. You know.
Yeah. And it's still really, like, I'm really happy about the state of WWE for the most part. They seem to be cooking on all cylinders. Nothing is ever perfect. You can never point to any time in the business be like, man, it was great top to bottom no matter what. And, you know, people can lie and, you know, they have their own favorite parts. But even now, it's not perfect. But I was at SummerSlam in Detroit with Greg. It was the last time I got to see him. And, first of all, Detroit sucks. I'm sorry to anybody out there. There's nothing to do in that city unless you're like a partier, I guess. The whole town, the whole city smells like weed and cigarette smoke, so it's gross. But the show itself, to the positives, the show itself was great. That twist with Jimmy, I was a little like, but dude, they were electric for when not MJF. I'm trying to LA Knight. When LA Knight came out, you know, the whole crowd's into it. I was into it. Sang along to Cody's theme. Him versus Brock was great. The main event was great. We were all into Jay, and the crowd still pops up their finger when Roman comes out, giving respect to the tribal chief. You know, it's a fun time. And if you can ever go to a WWE show, especially a pay-per-view, definitely go. Definitely do that. If there's rumors right now that SummerSlam 2024 is going to be in Cleveland, which is an odd choice, but if it is, I'm going to try to go with a buddy of mine.
Well, hell yeah! Thanks.
Because you know, when I think of summer, I think of Detroit and Cleveland.
I'll talk to you a little bit about that a little off air. But as always, guys, thanks for listening. Fly high. I'm out.